Hey guys, today we're unboxing and taking our first look at the Creality K1 Max. So I've just removed the printer from the box. I removed the protective film on the front and the tape that was kind of holding the door shut, so now the door can open. And then these are the materials that were inside. So on the very top, we had our bag with our instruction manual. We had the glass top. We had this little insert here that has the power cord and the LCD screen here. And then this was sitting in the printer and I pulled it out the top exactly like this. And this contains a spool of filament. So this is their Hyper PLA, their Fast PLA in white. We have a box labeled hot end, a bunch of rubber feet, and a couple little brackets. It looks like this is for the door. Yep, the door handle. And then in here, we've got tools, assembly tools, snips, glue stick, etc. So one of the first steps is to install the screen. There's a sticker on here that tells you to make sure that the platform screws, which are here, here, and here, they're identified by these little yellow arrows. It says make sure that they're removed before we turn on the power. So I'm gonna leave this protective film on there with that sticker just to remind us. But this just gets connected at the front here with a little piece of tape holding the ribbon cable down. And then the screen gets oriented like this. These grooves go right in there. And we'll just make sure that this clicks in like this. There we go. Yep, that's in. And then tip it, slide those little fingers in and just push down, kind of wiggle it down. There we go. Yep. And with any luck, perfect. So I almost lost a part, and the next part is installing the spool holder here. It was buried in this piece of foam there, so make sure you get that out when you're getting the filament spool out. This goes on the back of the machine here. It's just like a quarter twist, so put it in, give it a twist. There you go, pretty simple. So since we're already here, I'm going to install the spool of filament. So just as we normally would, we'll kind of trim off any of the mangled piece at the end. We're gonna cut this on a 45-degree angle or so, like that. And then orient it so it's spooling this way, so it goes straight up into the Bowden tube here, like this. And it should guide it kind of all the way to the hot end. So the next step says to install the lid. So we've got this guy here. I'm just gonna remove the plastic from both sides. Okay, and they show the handle being at the front, so we'll put it in like this. There's a little foam gasket in there, so it's resting on foam, so it's kind of soft like that. And that's all there is to that, pretty simple. I'm gonna opt to install the printer on these kind of extra cushy rubber feet. I mean, there are rubber feet on the machine already, but I'm gonna install these. Just kind of let the original feet sit inside this little cup there. And then for the rest of the install, it's gonna guide us through step by step on the screen, including removing those screws that I mentioned earlier. So let's just plug it in and turn it on. So in the manual, it says, turn on the machine, which we're at the language selection here. But remember the sticker said, remove the screws before turning on the machine. In the manual, it shows the screen leading us through the process of removing those screws. So I'm going to actually follow the manual here. So we'll go English, next. And there it is, showing us to remove these screws, A, B, and C, so around the platform there. So we've got, A, B, and C is how they have them labeled with these little stickers. So we can remove these stickers as we remove each of those screws, and maybe remove this guy as well. Okay, so let's remove each of these. All right, so we've removed all those 3 screws. We'll hit OK. Oops, there we go. Welcome. So we're going to connect to our Wi-Fi here. Okay, so we're connected here and we can see our IP address. So then we'll hit next. Time zone, we're UTC -5. Okay, and we can attach this to our Creality Cloud account by going in our app. So in my Creality Cloud, we can see my previous Creality machines, including the K1 that we recently reviewed, this being the larger sibling to that. So I'm going to just add a new one. I'll hit plus at the top, and I will scan. Where's the scan here? It's a K1 Max. Scan the QR code. Whoa, where are we? There we go. I'm just going to call it the K1 Max. There we go. We can see it's online. And if I go inside there, we'll be able to see the temperatures that it's at right now. Nozzle's 25, bed's 24, chamber temp is 25, etc. And we can, do cloud slicing if we choose to do that, but we're going to do local slicing here. And we can also see the webcam. So the webcam is up here on the upper front right corner of the machine. And right now it still has a protective film, on it. A little red tag. So take that guy off. Should be a little clearer. There we go. Okay, so that's working. So we've already bound this to our Creality account, so I'll hit next. And now we're going to do the self-detection, self-inspection process. So we'll hit start detecting. It's going to make sure that the nozzle's heating. As the nozzle's heating up, we can hear the fan spin up there on the cold side. Speaking of nozzles, the box that said hot end has a new nozzle assembly. So you've got like the throat, the heater, and the nozzle on the end there, as well as a silicone sock and some assembly screws. So you've got at least one replacement on hand. And now that we're at input shaping, this is where we're going to get the machine to vibrate and oscillate in the X and Y, and sometimes I think the Z direction. But really the X and Y is the only ones that you would be tuning for input shaper. I know that previous machines, I think the Bamboo was also doing this at one point. But you'll hear the vibration kind of change in frequency as it's learning to tune out the resonant frequencies of the machine. So if you change the location of your printer, both the table that it's on, this table is not the sturdiest, but also those feet, if you happen to take those off, you really should rerun the input shaper, because the way that the machine is going to vibrate is going to be influenced to some degree by the surface and the feet themselves. So you want that tuning to be as accurate as possible. Just rerun that tuning again if you change it. So while that's doing the input shaper, just ignore that noise. The manual didn't actually have a step yet, nor did the screen about installing the handle on the front door. So the handle came in this bag, and it shows that you bolt through the back, through some little rings, into the plate, and then through the handle. So these little hollow grommets, they have like a fat shoulder on them. We're going to put them through the back of the metal plate. And the long edge of the metal plate is going to go furthest to the edge of the glass. Through those grommets, we're just going to press. You don't even have to thread them, you can just kind of push them through with your thumb. Press through the two screws. They'll hold themselves in there nicely. And then put that whole thing through the back of the glass and line it up with the holes in the front of the handle. And then just screw that on there. And while you're screwing it on, oops, don't drop your screws. While you're screwing it on, just make sure that the fat edge of this is flush or tucked in with the side of the glass. You don't want it protruding at all. And there's a magnet that's embedded kind of behind the foam tape right here. So that will line up with the metal plate, and we'll close the door like that for you. So a couple things to address. It's finished the self-test. When it was doing that calibration with everything jiggling, you're not supposed to touch the printer. I did indeed install this while that was going. I could have tainted those results, so I really should do that calibration again, to be honest. Or just heed that warning and don't touch the printer while it's doing that, and install your handle afterwards. So I just hit finish or OK or close, whatever that button was. and now it's lowering the bed all the way. A couple things that I'll point out. This is obviously the larger version of the K1. This is 300 by 300 by 300 cubed, so about 1 cubic foot of build volume. And in addition to the features that the K1 had, things like the auxiliary cooling fan here on the side, this has the LiDAR. So they say that this is for like perfect layer detection. I didn't see any mention in the literature about flow control. So I know that something like the Bamboo does flow control, where it does some little test streams and kind of measures them with LiDAR. So I'm going to do some more reading on that as we spend the next week or so with the printer and come back with some test prints and results. But otherwise, it generally looks the same. It has the glass on the top instead. We still have clipper gates, belts all around. It's obviously fully enclosed, and we have an exhaust fan here at the back with a filter on the back there of sorts. We have USB in the front. We have hardwire Ethernet if you don't have Wi-Fi, hardwired in the back as well. And it comes with a like a PEI spring steel print surface there, and a really strong magnet. So right now we can see the temperatures on the main screen here slowly going down. Under the settings there, we can home, move X, Y around. We've got the temperatures for our hot end and our build plate, ambient chamber temperature. So if I hit Y+, it's going to move it 1 millimeter at a time. Maybe we'll do 30 millimeters. There you go. Moving it further to the back. I could home X and Y. And then as far as our first test prints, we'll be under the file menu here. Sorry, I'm skipping ahead. So that's the movement under the settings here. If we've got extruder and retract, this is where we could extrude some material here. So if I keep kind of feeding it in the back and hit extrude, it's got to heat up the nozzle again anyway. It's set to 240 in this case, which is awfully hot for that material. I'll come back to that as it's heating up. Under the folder icon, we've got 3 local, so on the onboard memory, sliced files here. There's a spool holder, something called a crust cube, and a 3D benchy. These are all sliced for Hyper PLA as per the titles there, and it even gives you an indication as to how long they're going to take to print. So those will be 3 of the test prints that we do. Under the gear icon here, we've got some system settings like screen brightness and when to turn the screen off every 3 minutes. Our language, which we've already chosen, update reminder, we've already binded it to our Creality cloud account, so nothing to do there. And if I go self-inspection, I could redo the input shaping, which is what I'm going to do when we're finished here. Okay, let's go back to that extrude. And can I set the temperature? I don't seem to be able to set the temperature. So we just got to wait for it to get to 240. We're at 240 now. So it should, there we go, it's extruding. So I know that the material is loaded in the printer, not just stopped at the gear. We could extrude more if we wanted, but since I saw it coming out of the nozzle, I'm happy that it's feeding all the way in through the back. And so, yeah, now we're ready to redo that calibration. Let's go back to self-inspection. Before we do self-inspection, let's double check. Are there any updates? Network. Our Wi-Fi is connected. Our camera. I wonder, AI function. First layer detection. AI detection in optimization. First layer detection, printing pause due to faults. Support Creality print only. So we're going to printing pause due to faults. We're going to turn that on. So if it sees that there's a fault in the first layer, it should pause the print instead of continuing. And then I'll go back. Camera settings, time lapse. We'll leave that enabled. Under maybe system, I just want to look for an update. Currently on the latest version. Okay, that's good. Did I hit something to check that? I don't even know why I hit or why it said that, but anyway, we're on the latest version, so that's good. So now I will go back to self-inspection and go input shaping, and we're gonna hit start detecting and not touch the machine after that. Okay, let's just close this and leave it alone. After that, we'll do our test prints. Well, we're back about a week later, and we have 4 different test prints. We have the 3 factory sliced prints that were done in the Hyper PLA that they provided with the printer, and we have one here, which is a fan shroud done in ASA. So this is our own slice, of course. Looking at these ones first, all 3 of them, absolutely nothing to speak about. Perfect prints all the way around. They printed fast, very similar to the times that it estimated they would be. And they're just pristine, buttery smooth. And the CR test cube is kind of neat. It's got kind of curved overhang test here and then square overhang test. If you look extremely closely, it did better on the square overhang than the curved, kind of where the angles get really steep right before the full overhang portion. It did the full overhang portion right in the dead center there perfectly, but as it approaches that, there's the slightest bit of droop on those strands. Hopefully it picks that up on camera, but I'm really splitting hairs there. So that's the CR test cube, I think it was called, and then the benchy, of course, and beautiful overhangs on the benchy, no stringing, printed fast. And then when we did our slice in ASA, if you're familiar with ASA, similar to ABS, I believe it has a little bit better UV resistance, and it has typically a matte finish to it when it's done printing, unlike ABS. We used very, very minimal cooling. The only time you'd really want cooling is for overhangs. And if you have really short layer times, you might want a little bit of cooling. I've run upwards of like 30 to 40% cooling if the layers are very short. But this turned out very well. You do see some discoloration where it was bonded to the build plate there. But either a quick flash with a lighter usually removes that, or if you were, acetone smoothing it or something. But just minor discoloration, even rubbing it with your thumb gets rid of most of it. So depending on what you're using to glue this down, I've used the printing liquid by Cora 3D for rubbing it on my bed, letting it dry, and then printing on it, similar to Magic Goo, and it leaves this similar kind of white stain behind from time to time. And if I just take a lighter and really quickly like that, it disappears and it becomes all uniform color. So that's not a fault of the printer, but it turned out good. There's a little overhang here in the pattern. It didn't really droop, but those strands aren't fully bonded to the layer below it. And from an overhang perspective, we have a couple strands here that drooped on the full overhang of these circles there. But the rest of it turned out perfect. The layers are well bonded. It helps that it's obviously an enclosed printer. Keep those temperatures up there, and like I said, keep those fan levels low. So that turned out pretty well. Definite room for improvement here, and it could be refined further and printed again to get a good indication of what it's capable of when it's not your slicing that's at fault. But from the factory, absolutely perfect. These prints are great, and this is what you should be able to expect if you take the time and get to learn the printer and how it handles different materials. Hopefully you found all that useful. Remember to like and subscribe and ring the bell to get notified when we upload more videos. Thanks for watching.